just after, say, World War I, Bermuda's economic, I guess, system was sort of like was down low.
The Bermuda government, after the war, they needed to create some new business.
And they decided to go with tourism. In the meantime, they didn't, all the hotels at that particular period were sort of like out of date. And I guess the facilities date back to the 1800s.
Bermuda government was looking for a place in Bermuda that they could have this recreational facility or hotel, or golf course, and they looked far and wide in the island.
And this committee went up and down the country. They found about 9 different sites. They had a golf course up in Spanish Point. You remember that, no? Well, there was a golf course. The military had Ocean View. There was a military golf course, right? And all of that was looked at.
The actual company that bought Tucker's Town is called the Bermuda Development Company, right?
But with Castle Harbor, with the Tucker's Town situation, the people did not know too much what was happening in the background, right? Because a lot of this stuff was kept sort of like under wraps. When it did come out to public view, it was in the newspaper, in the Royal Gazette, front page, 500 acres of land in Tucker's Town to be taken for new hotel property. And according to my grandmother, people were shocked, but they were never consulted at first. What eventually happened was that the government passed an act that gave the Bermuda Development Company the power to be able to take land by acquisition, right? By taking it by, whether you want to sell it or not, they would take the land. And this here caused a lot of problems for people. And of course, you got to remember that a lot of people did not want to sell the land.
They started to get to try and get it, you know.
And this caused a lot of hardship because then people were forced out, right, to go and look for living space elsewhere.
In fact, I can imagine the amount of intimidation that was going on, you know.
That showed you how easy it was for a minority group of people, right, to have such control. So it was really a minority government, really, right? Because in a country that had 20,147 population at that time, 1923, 2022, had a population of 20,147, right? Only 1,400 people were able to vote.
I think it's a great idea to bring that into the discussions because it makes it real. A lot of times, I can't speak about the black community or the brown community, but for the white community, there's a lot of self-protection that goes on where people say, well, slavery was a long time ago, I don't own any slaves, or can we just let it go? And those are real convenient statements when in fact unless the stories are in your face, you can't ignore people telling you that this was the house that Jack built and this is where we grew up and we had to move, we had no choice. Or my great-grandmother is the woman who was physically taken off the property, kicking and screaming because she would not sell. And
people were saying, well, you're opening new wounds, you're digging up old bones. But, sometimes that's what you have to do.
When I would drive across Tucker's Town and go across the place and look over there and say, well, look, that's where my granny was born. That's where my Aunt Henrietta lived. And then I began to think about how it become what it is now. That they were forced out by a government, a minority government.
Every week when I watch cable television, I see some sort of story or some documentary on what happened during World War II. Nobody tells those people to get over it. But whenever we deal with something with the black community, it's done, get over it, It's...
And it still had, and to think that this mentality, a lot of that mentality, some of that mentality still exists today in Bermuda.
And the whole mockery of, that the land and the homes were bought for market value, which we know is not true. The documents show it, but to see people, I think, as a white person, you can't hide anymore from that. You can't say, well, it's been such a long time ago, why can't you let it go? It's like, well, not so long ago that these people aren't still here telling us their stories.
The land at Tuckertown, after it was taken, of course, you know, they have the cemetery down there.
I'm very excited about tomorrow going to Tuckerstown because I know a lot of the stories, but I've never met anybody. I've never even been to Tuckerstown. So the idea of seeing it alive and hearing it is going to be, I mean, one, very emotional, but very poignant.
Can I have your attention, please? We're leaving to go to hell. So I hope you're ready for it. That's right.
Nobody's questioning
They made the graveyard into a driving range. But, you know, you turn it into a driving range. You turn to, I mean, that's.
I know my grandfather, my great grandfather's buried there. His brother's buried there. His wife's buried there. I have an Earl aunt. I recognize the names. I know they were buried there from Earl records, right?
This is a day that we are revisiting in our history. And I think we can measure it whichever way our emotions run. For me, my emotions are deep. Because in this graveyard, are my ancestors.
The current owners, the Mid-Ocean Club, or the Tuckers Point Group, they bought the property from the Bermuda Development Company. They have no real responsibility when it comes to appropriating that property. You know, they weren't a part of that.
Now, the promise by the Bermuda Development Company to take care of the cemetery, they promised that they were going to keep that cemetery clean and keep it in good shape, you know, maintained.
Custodians mostly keep the place clean. But when it goes beyond being kept clean, it becomes another experience, another bit of attention, another type of person, another type of caring.
When we came down here, these walls weren't in place. These trees were in this area and the graves had no tops on them. They're trees growing out of the graves. The essence of desecration. Because part of the responsibility of the acquisition of this land was to maintain the graveyard. And it wasn't until 1992 that I came to look for the grave. I couldn't find it because this is all I could see.
And Tuckers Point did come up to the wicket, rebuilt the walls that were crumbling, and trimmed the hedges, put tops on the coffins. And there's enough evidence around showing, with pictures showing the before and after.
So it's one thing to let a grave go fallow and to play golf over it and to hit golf balls and to pretend it's not there. But then to be forced to mark it and to actually build a wall around it and have a plaque there and still have golf balls rain down on it, I think feels worse to me.
And there was a ceremony held here to rededicate this grave and to reopen the promise of maintenance, so that today we can clearly see that there were human beings interred here on this property.
I mean, if my parents were there, I would almost rather that it went back to some sort of state that was unmarked, right? Because there's something less desecrated about a grave that has grown over than a grave that is marked, and then that kind, and then to add insult to injury, a game that is about wealth. Golf is a game of the wealthy.
They made an enormous sacrifice, which put Bermuda on the path to becoming the Caribbean's leading tourist destination, and that sacrifice wasn't recognized. And not only was it not recognized, it was denigrated, you know, to this pathetic piece of land, you know, with a broken down wall around it and unidentified graves. It's callous, and to some extent, I mean, some are more to blame than others perhaps, but we're all to blame for letting that happen.
So if you have an issue with where your people are, especially dead, it should be sacred.
There's a grave site in Dockyard. It's a naval British grave site. And it gets the untold attention like you'd never believe. The maintenance is far, far greater in terms of attendance than we could ever imagine.
But if it isn't, those that are responsible must bring it to where it should be.
And that means the lawn was just cut this morning, the hedge was just cut this morning, and it's standing up hidden from the public.
Well, to think that there are human remains in and outside of those walls, it's just horrible. But that's it with big money, money that says they don't matter. And so the Historical Society has a job to do.
White buildings, well, white owned buildings where you know, quite a few white people did things. Not the black community.
I think they need to check it more and do more work there. Yes.
From today on, we have a serious matter, and it's not just about racism between the black and white. It's a situation of social interaction. Because we're here on this island, we're here together, and we must have a common objective.
Something like that should be, if not just kept up, but it should be acknowledged. It should be something that we should all, first of all, know about, and it should be part of our heritage just as much as Fort St. Catherine is sitting there and they take tourists down there and show them around and show them the history. Something like that should also be part of our history.
I think our children should know about the Tucker's Town story. I don't know how many do know. I think, actually, I spoke to a couple of people with our group who really didn't know about the Tucker's Town story, and these are adults.
Quite a few people came up to me after that. In fact, people on the street. I never knew that it was a graveyard in Tucker's Town.
And I think it's a part of our history. We should not forget our history. We use it and we learn from it, and we make sure that things that were not good before don't happen again.
You see, the people who run this area are not impossible.
They feel us. You know, yeah, they sort of feel us. So they're sort of, in a sense, coming on board. They recognize that there had been some injustices done, you know.
But they won't do anything unless you approach them. And so as we talked yesterday, when we got in our groups and came back, the whole thing was about communication and reason and logic. And so therefore, we can put forward ideas that are going to help both of us. They can continue to do what they do, and we can continue to have the respectability here.